we have so much to talk about, but first I wanted you to tell us a little bit about what drew you to activism, Kerry, both through storytelling and your involvement in grassroots movements of all kinds, honestly.
Yeah.
And I know that some were real life characters, another was fictional. I feel like I'm giving her a pop quiz or something. But can you explain sort of why you were drawn to do the things that you've done and continue to do?
Sure. I mean, some of it started very early on. When I was a teenager, I started working with a theater and education group. It came out of Mount Sinai Hospital. It was called Star Theater, and it was kind of in the emergence of the AIDS epidemic in the late 80s, early 90s. And we did a show about AIDS education and safer sex and homosexuality and drug abuse and self-esteem. And as you can imagine, there were a lot of schools that were like, you can come and talk about not getting HIV, but you can't say the word condom. And we were like, yeah, that's not going to work. So really early on, I started to connect the idea of having a voice, advocacy, the power of art and theater to transform people's beliefs and behavior. But one thing I talked about in the magazine was after the election in 2016, I woke up the next morning and my character on Scandal, Olivia Pope, was trending. And I was like, I'm so confused. You know, I had descended into a very fearful morning, as many of us were concerned that there was going to be an attack on our civil rights and civil liberties. And I thought, why are people talking about Olivia Pope? And when I went online, it was like, Olivia Pope, you got to fix this. Like, Olivia Pope, save us. And I was honored, right? Like I was like, wow, this character really is a fixture in culture. But I was more concerned because I thought, you know, the reason why we got into this situation is because we believed that a person on television could fix things. And the only way that we save our democracy is if we each realize that we are the Olivia Popes of our lives, of our communities, of our families, right? And so trying to figure out how to remind people that they wear the white hat, that they have the potential to be the heroes of not only their own story in their life, but of this country and this world right now.
I also know that your mom and your aunts played a big role in inspiring you.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, my production company is called Simpson Street, and it's named after the street in New York, in the Bronx, that my mom grew up on. And so in many ways for me, you know, I think in our company, we really try to uphold the belief that every single person is the hero at the center of their journey, right? That we all deserve to see ourselves as protagonists in our lives. We shouldn't be relegated to being just the best friend or the wife or the girlfriend. We are the heroes. And so I wanted to name the company after, in effect, my once upon a time. You know, my grandparents came to this country through Ellis Island in the 30s from Jamaica. And that street, Simpson Street in the Bronx, was our once upon a time. It was the beginning of my fairy tale. It was the beginning of our journey in this country. So my mom and her sisters, there were 2 brothers too, but nobody ever talks about the brothers. There were 7 of them. But my mom and her sisters, that's the matriarchy that made me. They are incredible women.
You also played Anita Hill.
I did.
And I'm curious, getting to know Anita, who's
God.
just an extraordinary person, of course, but also playing her. What lessons did you take away from that experience that inspire you to this day?
Well, Anita Hill gave me one of the greatest compliments I've ever had as an actor, because she came up to me after the last day of shooting and she said, I need to talk to you. And I said, what? And she said, I didn't know I had a walk. I said, what? She said, I'm watching you do my walk. I didn't know I had a walk. I said, yeah, girl, you got a walk. So that was a real compliment to embody her in that way. But I think, you know, when I think about the sacrifice that Anita Hill made to come forward and speak not just her truth, but the truth, you know, capital T truth, to know that she was not going to be believed, that she was going to be vilified. It was an enormous sacrifice. It changed her life, and not for the better, but it was necessary. And, you know, I think she's such a hero because when people look back on those hearings, I remember when I was making the film, I had some young people say to me, oh yeah, Anita Hill, she lost, right? And I was like, oh, there was nothing to lose. She came forward and gave her truth, And while that person still sits on the Supreme Court, the number of women who ran for Congress the following year, the number of women who stepped into their power, the businesses, the cultures that were transformed by suddenly having sexual harassment training, or even having the language of sexual harassment, or the language to say something has happened to me that I'm not okay with and I'm going to speak truth to it, that was amazing. And I have to say, she's amazing. It was also phenomenal for me because when I went to work that day and I had to sit there and pretend testify to all of those men, she and I had a laugh about it that night because I said I was terrified. I was terrified to sit in that room and look up at all of those straight, white, cisgender men, those older men having all that power over this woman. And I felt your fear. I said, but this time around, they were all working for me. So that was fun. We would do a take and I'd be like, are you guys good? Do you need any snacks? Is everybody good?